what if you're younger and you say, this is an asset class I'm excited about, I want to get into? How do you start?
Yeah, so that's one of the real challenges, right? It's an
Yeah.
incredibly difficult asset class to get into, and you know the wealth advisor space better than anybody, but we've looked up the specs on this, right? There's 15,000 plus SEC registered investment advisors, and it's 114 trillion or something in that range in assets under management. And that group of folks that are really servicing a lot of young people starting to build wealth generation portfolios have pretty limited access to farmland, right? So you've got a couple of REITs, you've got Gladstone, and you've got Farmland Partners. What you're doing there is you're actually working, you're taking an asset class that's non-correlated with public markets and sort of wrapping it up in a public market. So there's always a little bit of an interesting dynamic with the
Sure.
REIT in farmland and how those values will work over time.
Yeah.
Direct ownership is hard, right? There are some funds that are out there that you can get in as on a commingled basis. So you'll put your capital into a fund. A lot of those farmland funds, the entry point might be a little bit high for
Yeah.
somebody first getting started. And so direct ownership requires a lot of knowledge, right? How do you actually find a deal? Certainly you can go out and look at public listings, but now I have to negotiate it. I have to understand if I'm getting the right price. I have to understand how to structure leases. And so that's where we're trying to create products where we can help folks that want to get into the game in smaller increments and get started with farmland, be able to make that happen. And that could be through their wealth advisor. And we're certainly seeing some fractional ownership platforms emerge with AcreTrader and FarmTogether as examples where folks can get in at, let's call it 25 or $50,000 increments and get partial ownership in farmland. The key is with farmland, if you want to start early, figure out how you're going to get into it, find the right product, but just be in it and stay in it for a long term, for the
Yes.
long term, because that performance is really, really consistent.
Well, and I think to me that's where farmland is such a important asset class institutionally. When you start looking at everything from the defined benefit space to the private wealth space to the family office space to even institutional spaces, because here's an asset, it's not valued every half second. You're not going to be able to see it go up and down. You don't have that consistency, that volatility. You're looking at a long term performance vehicle that helps smooth some of that risk and volatility you might see in other elements of a portfolio.
Yeah, there's no ticker for farmland. In the long-term thesis is pretty clean, right? So
Yeah.
we like to look at yield curves, right? So how much are we producing off of our land? And corn is this beautiful dynamic where if we look at what's happened, corn yield at a local level or at a national level, no matter how you actually slice that and look at the data, we're at 2+ bushels per acre per year in gain. That's producing more with less. And
Yes.
that trend is going to continue for an extended period of time, right?
Sure.
We've got absolute stability and revenue from our federal crop insurance program. You've got really good fundamentals that you've probably talked about relative to global diets, right? And the increasing quality of the diets that creates more calorie needs from land to feed through animals as median incomes rise in certain high populated countries. That thesis is great. The biofuels, renewable fuels thesis is also really good in terms of creating additional markets. And then the one that we're incredibly excited about that is very much out there and just materializing is non-ag revenue. We're talking about renewable energy infrastructure, think wind and solar, right? The battery storage, the transmission, everything that comes with the carbon storage within our soils. These are really, really massive revenue streams that fundamentally require this same constrained land resource in order to fulfill, right? And so this story, we see the long-term dynamics with the farmland and the scarcity of it as being incredibly strong.